It was January 30th, 2001, 7:41 p.m. As quickly as my son was delivered by emergency C-section, he was carried off by the nurses to the NICU. That began one of the longest nights of my life. After several hours, my wife began to wonder why they had not brought our newborn baby to the room. We would soon learn that our son's blood sugars were dangerously low and he was very weak. In an instant, we were caregivers, no experience required. Our son Daniel spent 17 days in the NICU before he was united with us at home. And that is when the questions began. My wife and I never denied that something was wrong. The problem was we did not have any answers for all of our questions. It would be 4 years before we would learn that he had a rare genetic condition, as well as being a carrier of a blood disorder which compromised his development in utero. This delay in diagnosis prolonged our ability to intellectually, emotionally, and spiritually accept being a caregiver. The church where my wife and I were married had a special ministry for families whose children had developmental disabilities. The leaders of the ministry, Brad and Joyce Frost, had a daughter with cerebral palsy. Their passion to help other families who had a special needs child blossomed out of their personal experiences, just as Sandy McCann's did. But the ministry is so much more than just a place for your child on Sunday morning. Sandy and her staff are genuine and have a passion to serve, from the adults who provide oversight to the middle school and high school helpers who walk alongside the children in both a physical and spiritual sense. Every caregiver can relate to the difficulties of managing life and providing care for their loved one. Stress is always at an elevated level, and rest is often in short supply. Weariness waits at the door, peering in the window, looking for the most inopportune time to interrupt the caregiver's life. However, on Saturday and Sunday, Sandy and her team are ready to engage with the children and provide a loving environment in which the children can learn about faith, hope, and love. Caregiving is a never-ending experience. The monotony can cause the caregiver to feel beaten down and isolated and ready to give in. Rest is scarce and often comes in irregular intervals. But for some, even those moments are few and far between. That is why a ministry such as Hugs is so important. It allows caregivers the time necessary to re-energize their spiritual batteries. And although some caregivers would not acknowledge it, the work they are doing is deeply spiritual in nature. The willingness to set aside their personal desires to meet the needs of another person is, by definition, a spiritual attitude. And when that attitude is displayed by teenagers and adults alike, there is a reflection of God's character in their actions. It may not seem like an hour on Sunday makes much of a difference, but it does. It helps the caregiver not feel so alone in his or her experience. It shows that someone else cares enough to make a difference in your child's development. And it reassures the caregiver that even in a fallen world, God is at work in the lives of His people, providing for your child's every need. And that is something to think about.